Chapter 4, Section 2, The Middle Colonies, Farms and Cities, Part 2. Okay, when we last left off, we were talking about how the cities in the Middle Colonies prospered due to the fact that they were on rivers and the products from the farms, specifically wheat, grain, and rye, were sent down the rivers to the cities that could be then traded to Europe when imports from Europe came in and the cities grew because of all of these factors. Today we're going to pick up on how the colonies, or specifically the Middle Colonies, were a very diverse region. So here we go. So a diverse region. Many different immigrant groups arrived in the port cities of the Middle Colonies. Soon the region's population showed a remarkable diversity, or variety, in its people. One of the largest immigrant groups in the region after the English was the Germans. Many of the Germans arrived between 1710 and 1740. Most of them came as indentured servants fleeing religious intolerance. Known for their skillful farming, these immigrants soon made a mark on the Middle Colonies. German communities, wrote one historian, could be identified by the huge barns, the sleek cattle, and the stout workhorses. Germans also brought a strong tradition of craftsmanship to the Middle Colonies. For example, German gunsmiths first developed the long rifle. Other German artisans, or craftspeople, became ironworkers and makers of glass, furniture, and kitchenware. Germans built Conestoga wagons to carry their produce to town. These wagons used wide wheels suitable for dirt roads and the wagon's curved beds preventing spilling when climbing up and down hills. The wagon's canvas covers offered protection from rain. Conestoga wagons would later be important in the settling of the West. The Middle Colonies became home to many people beside the Germans. There were also the English, Dutch, Scots-Irish, African, Irish, Scottish, Welsh, Swedish, and French. Because of the diversity in the Middle Colonies, different groups had to learn to accept, or at least tolerate, one another. A climate of tolerance. While the English Puritans shaped life in the New England colonies, many different groups contributed to the culture of the Middle Colonies. Because of the greater number of different groups, it was difficult for any single group to dominate the others. Thus, the region's diversity helped to create a climate of tolerance. Some of the region's religious groups also helped to promote tolerance. The Middle Colonies' earliest settlers, the Dutch in New York and the Quakers in Pennsylvania, both practiced religious tolerance. That is, they honored the right of religious groups to follow their own beliefs without interference. Quakers also insisted on the equality of men and women. As a result, Quaker women served as preachers and female missionaries traveled the world spreading the Quaker message. Quakers were also the first to raise their voices against slavery. Quaker ideals influenced immigrants in the Middle Colonies, and eventually the whole nation. African Americans in the Middle Colonies. The tolerant attitude of many settlers in the Middle Colonies did not prevent slavery in the region. In 1750, about 7% of the Middle Colonies' population was enslaved. As in New England, many people of African descent lived and worked in cities. New York City had a larger number of people of African descent than any other city in the northern colonies. In New York City, enslaved persons worked as manual laborers, servants, drivers, and as assistants to artisans and craftspeople. Free African American men and women also made their way to the city, where they worked as laborers, servants, or sailors. Tensions existed between the races in New York City, sometimes leading to violence. In 1712, for example, about 24 rebellious slaves set fire to a building. They then killed 9 whites and wounded several others who came to put out the fire. Armed colonists caught the suspects, who were punished horribly. Such punishments showed that whites could resort to force and violence to control slaves. Even so, the use of violence did little to prevent the outbreak of other slave rebellions. Force would also be used in the South, which had far more enslaved Africans than the North. In the next section, we will learn how the South's plantation economy came to depend on the labor of enslaved Africans. This is the end of Chapter 4, Section 2. Please make sure you have completed the questions on your Google Doc and have submitted them through the Google Classroom for your homework. And there are also a few questions you should be able to answer now that the session is over. First, what attracted settlers to the Middle Colonies? Second, what service was performed at gristmills? Third, why might enslaved Africans be able to join in rebellion more easily in the city than in the country? And the last question to think about, what factors allowed large coastal cities to develop in the Middle Colonies? You should keep in mind the geography, the people, and the trade. Please make sure once again that you have submitted your homework through the Google Classroom, and we will see you in class tomorrow.